The Discovery. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the holographic display in her office aboard the lunar shipyards, watching as designs for the latest Galactic Council civilian transport rotated slowly in the air. After 6 months as Earth's representative to the Interstellar Ship Design Commission, she still couldn't shake her growing sense of unease. "Computer, overlay standard Earth commercial vessel architecture," she commanded. The hologram flickered as a second schematic appeared, this one showing the compartmentalized, redundant systems approach that had characterized human spacecraft since the earliest days of space exploration. The differences were stark. Where the Council design featured wide-open decks and centralized systems, Earth ships were divided into countless sealed sections. Where alien vessels prioritized efficiency and comfort, human ships seemed almost paranoid in their dedication to survival at any cost. Running comparison analysis, the computer announced. Warning: detected design philosophy divergence exceeds 87% from Galactic standard. Sarah ran her fingers through her short gray hair, a habit that had earned her the nickname static among her colleagues. The Council representatives had been pushing hard for Earth to adopt standardized designs, citing everything from economic efficiency to crew comfort. Their latest argument centered on the psychological impact of Earth's claustrophobic approach. Display historical data, Earth maritime vessel evolution, pre-space age, she ordered. The hologram shifted, showing cross-sections of ancient submarines and warships. The similarities to modern Earth spacecraft were unmistakable. Her comm unit chimed. "Dr. Chen, the Centaurian delegation is requesting your presence. They're expressing concerns about Earth's latest rejection of the standardization proposal. Tell them I'll be there shortly." Sarah gathered her data tablets, but paused as something caught her eye. "Computer, overlay all known cases of total vessel loss across Council space in the past standard year." Red dots appeared throughout the holographic display, dozens of them. "Statistical anomaly detected," the computer reported. "Survival rate for Earth design vessels significantly exceeds Galactic standard in cases of catastrophic system failure." Sarah's fingers froze mid-motion through her hair. Define significantly. Earth vessels demonstrate 89.3% crew survival rate in catastrophic failures. Galactic standard designs average 23.7% survival rate under identical conditions. "That can't be right," Sarah muttered. "Computer, extend analysis to past 10 standard years." The pattern held. Earth ships, with their supposedly inefficient design philosophy, were saving lives at nearly 4 times the rate of Council vessels. But something else caught her attention, a pattern in the losses themselves. "Computer, display vessel disappearance locations only, cases with no distress call and no debris field found." The hologram shifted again. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The disappeared vessels formed distinct patterns, like currents in an ocean, and not a single Earth ship was among them. Her comm chimed again, more urgently. "Dr. Chen, the delegation is most insistent. Tell them I'm reviewing critical safety data," she replied, already downloading the analysis to her secure tablet. "Computer, begin deep analysis of all historical maritime records focusing on unexplained disappearances. Flag any correlations with modern space vessel losses." As she hurried toward the meeting chamber, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she'd stumbled onto something far bigger than a simple design philosophy dispute. The patterns nagged at her scientist's mind. They looked almost like hunting grounds. The Centaurian delegation was waiting, their crystalline forms refracting the chamber's light in displays of barely contained irritation. But before the senior representative could speak, Sarah's tablet chimed with an urgent notification. The computer had found a correlation in the historical data. Her eyes widened as she read the first lines. "Historical maritime vessel disappearance patterns show 93% match with modern space vessel losses. Note: correlation strongest in regions designated as deep water on ancient Earth naval charts. Additional correlation found in surviving captain's logs. Recurring phrase detected: the deep is not empty." Sarah looked up at the waiting delegates, seeing their elegant open-deck ships in a new light. They had no idea what lurked in the depths of space. But somehow, humanity had never forgotten hidden patterns. The Exenorteology lab aboard the ESS Hawking hummed with activity as Dr. Sarah Chen's findings spread through the scientific community. Admiral James Torres watched the holographic display with growing concern as Dr. Chen presented her evidence. "These aren't random disappearances," Sarah explained, gesturing to the three-dimensional map showing centuries of lost ships. "Look at the distribution pattern. It's almost like schools of fish following ocean currents." Torres leaned forward, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic glow. "And you're saying we've seen this before?" "On Earth, yes. Ancient maritime records show identical patterns in vessel disappearances, particularly in deep ocean regions. What's more fascinating is this." She pulled up a new display showing ancient cave paintings. These were discovered last week in a submarine cavern off the coast of Indonesia. They're over 30,000 years old. The crude drawings showed stick figures in what appeared to be boats, surrounded by massive, shadowy shapes in the water. But what caught Torres's attention was the distinctive compartmentalized design of the boats, remarkably similar to modern Earth vessels. "Our ancestors knew," Sarah continued. "They learned to survive whatever was out there. That knowledge was so fundamental, so deeply ingrained, that it became part of our cultural DNA. We kept building ships the same way, even when we forgot why." A priority alert flashed across the lab's main screen. "Admiral," the ship's AI announced, "we're receiving a distress signal from the Arcturian passenger liner Star Dream. They'd gone dark in Sector 7. Torres straightened. "Sector 7. That's right along one of your pattern lines, Doctor." Sarah was already pulling up the data. "Sir, look at this. The Star Dream's last known position matches exactly with 3 other disappearances in the past decade. Classic Council design. Open decks, centralized systems. How long until we reach them?" 30 minutes at maximum burn," the AI responded. "Too long," Sarah muttered, studying the patterns. "Sir, I've been analyzing the historical data. In Earth's oceans, ships didn't just disappear. Sometimes they were found empty." Torres activated his command interface. "All hands, battle stations. Dr. Chen, you're with me on the bridge. If your theory is correct, we might be about to make first contact with something humanity hasn't seen in millennia." The bridge of the Hawking was a stark contrast to the elegant command centers of Council vessels. Reinforced bulkheads, redundant control stations, and emergency survival pods lined the walls. As they approached the Star Dream's last known coordinates, the crew worked with practiced efficiency. "Multiple contacts," the sensor officer announced. "Sir, they're not showing up on standard scans, only visible on the deep field array." Sarah rushed to the sensor station, her face pale. "Those readings, they're similar to what deep-sea sonar used to pick up in the hadal zones of Earth's oceans." The massive view screen showed only empty space, but the sensor displays told a different story. Enormous shapes moved through the void, their patterns eerily similar to hunting marine predators. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Star Dream. Audio only." The bridge speakers crackled to life with a voice speaking in broken standard. "They're in the walls. They're in the walls. How do they get through the walls?" "Full stop," Torres ordered. "Power down all non-essential systems." "Doctor, what are we dealing with?" Sarah's hands flew over the sensor controls. The patterns match perfectly with deep ocean predator behavior. "They're not just similar to sea creatures, Admiral. They're identical. Somehow, the same force that hunted in Earth's oceans followed us into space. Or maybe we followed them." A new alert blared through the bridge. "Multiple hull breaches detected on the Star Dream," the AI reported. "Sir, the breaches appear to be from the inside out." "Show me," Torres commanded. The view screen shifted to show the Arcturian liner. Its sleek hull was punctured in dozens of places, but the damage pattern was wrong. The metal was bent outward, as if something had torn its way out of the ship rather than in. "The walls," Sarah whispered, remembering the transmission. "Admiral, I don't think they phase through solid matter. I think they live in it. In the spaces between spaces. That's why Earth ships are different. All those compartments, the redundant systems, they're not just for survival. They're barriers, channels. We've been unconsciously designing our ships to control their movement patterns." The sensor officer's voice shook slightly. "Sir, the unknown contacts are changing formation. They're looking at us." Taurus's jaw set in a grim line. "Now we know why Earth ships are different, Doctor. The question is, what do we do with that knowledge?" The shapes on the sensor display began to move, and humanity's oldest nightmare emerged from the depths of space. The test. All hands, silent running. Admiral Torres's command echoed through the ESS Hawking's compartmentalized corridors. The crew held their breath as the massive shapes on the sensor display circled their position. Dr. Sarah Chen studied the readings with growing fascination and horror. "They're testing our boundaries," she whispered, "just like deep-sea predators testing a new prey species." The entities, Sarah couldn't bring herself to call them creatures, moved through space in ways that defied conventional physics. They seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially elsewhere. The sensor readings showed them passing through solid matter as if it were water, but they couldn't penetrate the specialized alloys and compartmentalized design of the Hawking. "Admiral," the tactical officer reported, "we're detecting survivors aboard the Star Dream, concentrated in their auxiliary control room, the only section of their ship built to Earth specifications due to Council safety regulations." Torres nodded grimly. "That's why they're still alive." "Doctor, what are our options?" Sarah's mind raced through historical records, ancient maritime knowledge suddenly taking on new significance. Our ancestors figured out how to survive them. The compartments, they're not just barriers. They're channels. We can guide their movement patterns, like a labyrinth. A maze for space monsters. Torres raised an eyebrow. "More like flow control." Sarah pulled up the Hawking structural schematic. "Look at these patterns in our hull design. They're not random. They create specific flow paths. Our ancestors learned to direct these entities' movement, using ship architecture like ancient sailors used currents." The violent shudder ran through the ship. "Contact," the tactical officer shouted. "They're probing our hull." "Fascinating," Sarah muttered, watching the sensor readings. "They can't penetrate our compartmentalized sections directly, but they're looking for gaps, natural flow paths, just like water seeking the path of least resistance." Torres leaned forward. "Can we use that? Create a path to draw them away from the Star Dream." Sarah's fingers flew over the controls. "Better. We can create a channel to guide them away from both ships." "But," she hesitated, "we'll need to power up specific sections of the hull in sequence, like opening and closing locks in a canal." "That means exposing ourselves," Torres understood, "making our presence known." "Yes, but if I'm right about their behavior patterns," Sarah highlighted a series of compartments on the schematic. "We can use our ship's design to essentially create a current they'll want to follow." Torres studied the plan for a long moment. Around them, the bridge crew waited in tense silence as the entities continued their probe of the Hawking's hull. Finally, he nodded. "Do it." Sarah began the sequence, powering up hull sections in a carefully calculated pattern. The effect was immediate. The entities responded to the energy signatures, their massive forms flowing along the paths created by the Hawking's architecture. "It's working," she breathed. "They're following the pattern. Admiral, we can extend the channel to the Star Dream, create a safe corridor for evacuation." Torres was already moving. "Bridge to engineering. Prepare for emergency power transfers. We're going to need precise control of every hull section." He turned to tactical. Launch rescue shuttles the moment we have a clear path. Standard Earth design only. Nothing Council-made leaves this ship. As the rescue operation began, Sarah made another discovery. Admiral, look at this. When they follow our energy patterns, they're leaving traces. Quantum signatures unlike anything I've ever seen, but they're familiar somehow. A junior officer spoke up. Sir, Dr. Chen, those signatures match theoretical models for ancient Earth sea life. Not just any sea life, the earliest forms ever recorded, from before the Cambrian explosion. Sarah's eyes widened. Of course, they're not just similar to Earth's deep-sea predators. They're their ancestors. Or maybe our deep-sea creatures evolved from them. These entities aren't just in space. They were on Earth first. In our oceans, our earliest ancestors encountered them, learned to survive them, and passed that knowledge down through maritime tradition. Tour is finished. Built into every ship design for thousands of years, even after we forgot why. The rescue operation proceeded methodically. Earth's compartmentalized shuttles navigated the safe corridor created by the Hawking's energy patterns, retrieving survivors from the Star Dream's auxiliary control room. The entities followed the paths Sarah had created, drawn away from both ships by the carefully controlled energy flows. As the last shuttle docked safely, Sarah couldn't shake a troubling thought. Admiral, if these entities were on Earth first, and now they're in space, what else don't we remember about them? And why did our ancestors work so hard to ensure we'd never forget how to defend against them? Torres watched the massive shapes disappear into the void, following the energy trail away from the ships. Something tells me we're about to find out, Doctor. And I have a feeling the Council is going to be very interested in Earth's ship designs after this. The Hawking's sensors tracked the entities until they vanished from range, moving in patterns that looked disturbingly like migration routes. Ancient migration routes that humanity had somehow never forgotten. Ancient warnings. The underwater archaeological site off the coast of Madagascar stretched for kilometers across the ancient seabed. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the reinforced observation bubble of the deep-sea research vessel Nautilus, watching as remote drones illuminated what appeared to be the remains of a prehistoric settlement. 30,000 years, she muttered, checking the dating results again. A maritime civilization that predates every known seafaring culture by millennia. Admiral Torres's voice crackled over the comm. The Council representatives have arrived in orbit, Doctor. They're insistent about seeing your findings firsthand. Of course they are. Sarah smiled grimly. After the Star Dream incident, the Galactic Council could no longer ignore Earth's unique ship designs. Tell them to suit up for deep-sea conditions. They need to see this exactly as we found it. Hours later, Sarah watched as the Council delegation, representatives from 12 spacefaring species, pressed against the observation windows of their submersible. The Arcturian ambassador's crystalline form sparkled with agitation as the drone's lights revealed more of the ancient settlement. Impossible, the Centaurian delegate whispered through their translator. These structures, they're exactly like your modern spacecraft compartments. Sarah nodded. Not just similar, identical. The same mathematical ratios, the same flow patterns. She gestured to a massive wall covered in primitive artwork. Watch this. The drones adjusted their lights, and the wall came alive with images. Crude but unmistakable depictions of massive fluid shapes moving through both water and what appeared to be solid rock. Alongside them were drawings of human structures, all featuring the distinctive compartmentalized design that would later characterize Earth's ships. They weren't just building shelters, Sarah explained. They were building barriers, channels, ways to control and direct the movement of something. She paused. Something that could move through solid matter as easily as water. The Regelian ambassador's tentacles writhed in distress. The entities from the Star Dream incident. Yes, but there's more. Sarah directed the drones to a new section of the settlement. Look at these markings. We've found identical symbols at sites across Earth, spanning thousands of years. They're not just warnings. They're instructions. A message passed down through generations. How to survive. The drone's lights revealed row after row of detailed diagrams. Despite their age, the geometric patterns were clearly recognizable to anyone familiar with modern spacecraft design. Your species, the Arcturian ambassador's voice, held a mix of awe and fear. You've been preparing for these encounters for your entire history. Not consciously, Sarah corrected. The knowledge became instinct, tradition. Every maritime culture on Earth developed similar designs independently. When we reached space, we naturally applied the same principles. We thought it was about survival in harsh environments, but it was really about them. Torres finished, entering the observation chamber. About the things that lived in the deep before we did. The things that followed us into space, or that we followed. A new drone transmission appeared on the main screen. You need to see this. Sarah's research partner, Dr. Marcus Wong, called from the excavation site. We found something in the central chamber. The camera panned across an enormous circular room, its walls covered in more detailed artwork than any they'd seen before. But it was the center of the chamber that drew everyone's attention. There, perfectly preserved in the oxygen-free environment, stood a model of what could only be described as a spacecraft. That's impossible, the Centaurian delegate protested. This site is 30,000 years old. Look at the design, Sarah breathed. The compartments, the flow channels. It's not just similar to our modern ships. It's exactly the same pattern, down to the smallest detail. Torres stepped closer to the screen. They weren't just warning us about the entities. They were showing us how to reach space safely, how to build ships that could survive out there. But why? Why leave such specific instructions? Sarah's attention was caught by a new series of images being revealed by the drones. I think they were showing us how to get back. Back. Several delegates asked simultaneously. Look at these sequences. Sarah highlighted sections of the wall art. They're not just showing the entities moving through water and rock. They're showing them moving between spaces, dimensions, and here. She pointed to a repeated symbol. This appears in maritime warnings across Earth's history. We thought it meant deep water, but it's more than that. It's showing layers of space itself. The implications hit everyone at once. The Arcturian ambassador's crystalline form pulsed rapidly. You're suggesting these entities, they didn't follow us into space. They've always been there, in the deep places between stars, just as they were in Earth's oceans. And humanity, Torres added, somehow encountered them before we even learned to write, learned to survive them, built that knowledge into every vessel we ever created. A new image appeared on the screen, the latest scan from Marcus's team. It showed a star chart, crude but unmistakable, with clear warnings marked around certain regions of space, regions that matched perfectly with the patterns of ship disappearances they'd been tracking. The question isn't just how our ancestors knew, Sarah said quietly. It's what else they knew, what else they were trying to tell us about what lives out there in the deep. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just developed unique shipbuilding techniques by chance. They'd been preparing, for 30,000 years, for a threat they'd never consciously remembered. And now, as more ships ventured into the depths of space, that ancient enemy was awakening once again. The awakening. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was held aboard the ESS Prometheus, Earth's newest deep space research vessel. The choice of venue was deliberate. Every alien delegate needed to see firsthand what Dr. Sarah Chen had discovered. The entities aren't just predators, Sarah explained to the assembled representatives. They're gatekeepers. Behind her, the massive holographic display showed the combined data from 30,000 years of human maritime history overlaid with modern space navigation charts. Admiral Torres stood at her side as she continued. Our ancestors didn't just learn to survive them. They learned to understand them. These beings exist in the spaces between spaces, in layers of reality our normal sensors can't detect. but they leave traces, patterns we instinctively recognized for millennia. The Regelian ambassador's translator crackled. "You speak of understanding, yet your ships are built for war against them." "No," Sarah corrected. "Our ships are built to work with them. Every compartment, every channel. They're not just barriers. They're pathways. Look at this." She gestured, and the hologram shifted to show the ancient spacecraft model they'd discovered underwater. Our ancestors were showing us how to navigate their realm. Torres activated a new display, showing sensor data from the Star Dream incident. The entities don't just move through space, they shape it. Those disappearing ships. They weren't destroyed. They were taken, drawn into the layers where these beings exist. A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. The Arcturian ambassador's crystalline form pulsed rapidly. "Taken where?" Sarah pulled up the ancient star charts. "Here. These patterns our ancestors marked. They're not warning signs. They're navigation markers. The entities create corridors through space-time itself. Natural phenomena we've been blind to because we've been looking in the wrong dimension. Shortcuts," Torres added. "Paths between stars that bypass normal space. Our ancestors knew about them, knew how to use them safely. But somewhere along the way, we forgot the knowledge and only remembered the fear." The Centaurian delegate's appendages twisted in agitation. "You suggest we deliberately enter their realm, after seeing what they do to our ships." "Your ships," Sarah corrected gently. "Ships built without understanding their nature. Look at the data. Not a single Earth-designed vessel has been lost to them, because our ships aren't just protected against them. They're designed to interact with them." She brought up a new simulation. The compartments create resonance patterns, energy flows that the entities recognize. They're not attacking our ships. They're trying to communicate with them, to guide them, just as they did for our ancestors. The main screen displayed footage from the Nautilus expedition. These ancient maritime civilizations, they didn't just survive encounters with these beings. They worked with them, used their natural pathways to traverse Earth's oceans in ways we're only now beginning to understand. When we reached space, we unconsciously built our ships to do the same thing. Torres stepped forward. "We're proposing a joint research initiative, combining Earth's instinctive understanding of these entities with the Council's advanced space technology. Not to fight them, but to learn from them. To relearn what our ancestors knew, how to safely navigate their realm." The chamber erupted in discussion. Sarah turned to another display, showing real-time sensor data from the Prometheus. All around the ship, invisible to normal sensors but clear on their specialized equipment, massive shapes moved through the void. Not hunting, but waiting, watching. "There's something else," she said quietly, and the room fell silent. "The timing of these discoveries isn't coincidental. Look at the pattern of ship disappearances over the past decade." The hologram updated, showing a clear increase. "They're becoming more active, more visible, almost as if they're trying to get our attention." Torres finished. Sarah nodded. Humanity's greatest achievement wasn't surviving these entities. It was learning to understand them. Our ancestors left us the knowledge encoded in every ship we built, waiting for the day we'd be ready to understand it. And now, the Arcturian ambassador moved forward, crystalline form shimmering. "Now what, Dr. Chen?" "Now they're reaching out again. Because something is coming. Something that made our ancestors hide this knowledge in our very bones. Something that made these entities reveal themselves to us again." She gestured to the ancient star charts, where specific patterns pulsed with ominous significance. "They're not just gatekeepers. They're guardians, and they're trying to warn us, just as they warned our ancestors 30,000 years ago." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Through the Prometheus's reinforced windows, the stars seemed to shimmer strangely, as if something moved in the spaces between them. Humanity had built their ships differently, not out of paranoia, but out of ancient wisdom. And now, as that wisdom began to resurface, one thing became clear. The entities weren't humanity's enemy. They were preparing us for something far worse. Torres looked out at the seemingly empty space, knowing it was anything but. "We're not alone out here," he said quietly. "We never were. And now it's time to remember why." Around the Prometheus, invisible to normal sight, but clear on their specialized sensors, the ancient guardians of the deep continued their eternal patrol, waiting for humanity to finally understand the message encoded in their very ships. The void is not empty, and we are not ready for what lurks in its depths.